Introducing the Peace of Mind pulse rifle from the PsiOps Battleground. It's a rapid-fire 540 RPM pulse rifle archetype with a bunch of interesting perk combinations and a bloody cool paint job. It drops randomly from the runic chest in the PsiOps Battleground activity, or from seasonal engrams at the helm. The pulse rifle has been a huge beneficiary from the pulse rifle buff in the Witch Queen, dealing a very good amount of damage to minor enemies and putting in serious work against mages and ultras too. In PvP, it's a 540 RPM, which, if you remember from our State of the Meta video last season, I listed as a great archetype. Not much has changed on that front since last season, so what makes this stand apart? Quite simply, one hidden stat that you wouldn't think was a big deal, but you can feel immediately with this pulse, and you're going to fall in love with it, just like I did. My name is Ascendant Nomad, and I'm your Crucible Doctor. Right, weapon reviews. I'm not the best reviewer out there, and I lack a lot of the experience and guile that comes with some of your favourite creators who do a great job on this already. But this pulse rifle really spoke to me as a PvP player. So much so that I felt compelled to do a review on it. That and my team threatened to cancel me over this tweet. Point is, I'm being punished for being naturally hilarious on Twitter. But in the process of being punished, I found myself really enjoying myself. Shockingly so. Though I really shouldn't be surprised at my ability to enjoy pain. I am a PvP main after all. So let's talk about the Peace of Mind. You know how to get it, even if getting a good one is up to RNG. Let me tell you about the one I got lucky enough to get. My Peace of Mind rolled with Arrowhead Break, Ricochet Rounds, Overflow, and Vorpal, and a Handling Masterwork. For most, this is very close to a god roll. At the very worst, this is a very good roll all around. The key thing to look for in this weapon is Arrowhead Break, more than any other perk you can look for because it is basically mandatory for most weapons in this archetype. The reason is simple. Arrowhead Break gives plus 30 to the hidden recoil direction stat that you can look up on light.gg, D2 Gunsmith, or even Dim. Let me show you in action here. I was lucky enough to get Arrowhead Break and Chambered Compensator on my roll, which is the next best option because it adds plus 10 recoil direction. Now look at the recoil with this barrel. I'm on mouse and keyboard for context. With the Chambered Compensator, the recoil direction value is 68, up from the base of 58. That makes the gun pull to the left quite noticeably. Now have a look at this with Arrowhead Break equipped. The recoil direction is now 88, still pulling to the left slightly, but far less noticeable and far more easier to control. Now let's try it with Arrowhead Break and Counterbalance to give 100 recoil direction. And next to it is Chambered Compensator for a comparison. Now you see why I say it's almost mandatory to have one of these two perks. If you don't roll one of those barrel perks, a Counterbalance mod to add plus 15 to the recoil direction is a must. Essentially, the closer to 100 you are, the more manageable the recoil is. Personally, I don't find myself yearning for that perfect 100 recoil direction. The 88 is plenty enough for me, and I chose instead to run Sprint Grip to give my gun that crispy, snappy feeling when I ADS. Rapid fires have always suffered from atrocious handling which belies their aggressive nature, so building into that nature through mods has always been my approach to them to make them feel as lethal as they shoot. Now, for the rest of the weapon. Ricochet rounds are a nice option on rapid fires of any description, particularly auto rifles, and it's nice to use here for some creative killing if the mood strikes you. Overflow and Vorpal is an S tier perk combination for PvE, and oh my god, I felt unstoppable with the two of them working in tandem. Both of these perks are known quantities, so I'll just say this. Vorpal weapon is more than a little handy when pulse rifles have a champion mod active that season. You get 72 in the mag with Overflow, and with backup mag and a pendant mag, it's entirely possible to get up to 96 in the mag, which is literally all kinds of hilarious. It's going to be a strong contender for the raid race, and an almost must-have for Grandmasters when we get around to them. In everyday PvE, the gun feels strong to use and makes you feel like a tank using it. Literally. Guns now roll with an origin perk that gives you extra in-game effects when you use them, and this one's origin perk is called Land Tank, which says final blows with this weapon grant increased resilience and additional damage resistance from combatants. I don't quite have the numbers on how much this affects you in PvE, but it is noticeable even in something as straightforward as the Battlegrounds playlist. The perk doesn't do anything overtly noticeable in PvP, sadly. I tested it out with a couple of friends and they didn't see any reduction in damage numbers when they shot me in the head with a hand cannon. There's some unconfirmed reports that land tank stacks add to your resilience levels, which is a nice to have, but it's not supremely game changing. And just as well because kill chaining and getting damage resistance would have been extremely broken in PvP. That didn't detract from the fact that the rest of the gun feels absolutely incredible to use in PvP. Overflow is surprisingly useful in a 6v6 environment, allowing you to chain kills with relative ease as a result of never having to worry about reloading. And with 6 supers on the field at any given time, Vorpal Weapon comes in handy more than I'd like to admit. Not feeling afraid of those super pops is a feeling I wouldn't trade the world for in PvP. But the key thing that I noticed during my time with this weapon is that I was constantly dueling well outside what I would consider normal engagement ranges with this weapon archetype. I was flat out dueling messengers, snipers, and scout rifles with relative ease, and at mid-range, I found the gun to be incredibly stable and controllable, giving me flashbacks to the sort of confidence I've only found with high stability pulses like Outbreak Perfected. On the face of it, yeah, 88 recoil direction was doing some serious work to help control that, but that didn't explain the magic source feeling. So I peeked under the hood, went to Gunsmith, and there it was. The direct comparison, whilst not a same slot rival, is the Darkest Before, a very competitive, hyper-focused dueler's dream in PvP. When we compare them statistically from a base level, they seem very similar. If anything, the Darkest Before has more range, stability, reload speed, and better recoil direction right off the rip. And yet, the Peace of Mind feels more stable, even at 68 recoil direction with Chambered Compensator as the barrel perk. See, the key stat differential here is the zoom and the aim assistance. The Darkest Before has 17 zoom and 75 aim assistance, whereas the Peace of Mind has 19 zoom and 82 aim assistance. In Destiny 2, the relationship between zoom and aim assistance hasn't been thoroughly tested, but we know enough from previous comparisons to make a general statement that largely rings true. The more zoom you have on your weapon, the more effective range you will see in-game over comparable weapons. Zoom tightens the accuracy cone, and can account for differences in weapon feel as a result. A good comparison would be Multimac CCX and Stochastic Variable. Both ship with 13 zoom as standard, but the Multimac has sights that add the zoom up to 17, and the Variable only has barrel perks and is stuck with that 13 zoom. As a result, people love the Multimac, or the Multi-Chad as it's known by some, and the Variable is just sort of considered a niche use weapon. Going back to Peace of Mind, the extra 2 zoom is affecting the weapon a great deal, and is stretching its effective range to be more in line with rangefinder palindromes, high-impact pulse rifles, and low-zoom rapid-fire sniper rifles. This is really hard to explain with just words, and in fact I'd rather refer you to my friend Castle's video where he tested every possible permutation of the Time-Worn Spire, which is also a kinetic rapid-fire pulse rifle that can roll with scopes that give it 19 zoom. In his video, he did some testing where he figured out that changing the selected scope, therefore changing your zoom level, has a noticeable effect on your damage fall-off. It physically changes the range of your gun. With that being the case, it is no real shock that at the ranges far into the Darkest Before with 17 zoom, the Peace of Mind is fully acclimatized and ready to slay out. It handles the mid-range better than the Darkest Before too, as a result of the recoil cone, or the recoil pattern, whatever you want to call it, being tighter at the same effective range. Play with them both and you will immediately feel this difference. Even in the same game, if you swap on one and go to the other, it is almost night and day once you know what you're looking for. Not to mention that extra 7 aim assistance, which is 70% of the boost that moving target gives you. Bullets feel very, very sticky on this weapon, and they feel sticky for further out. If I had high caliber rounds on this weapon, I'd have no problem taking on messenger users, or high impact sniper users. It is that good. The only real question then remains is, why use this over the Time-Worn Spire if it can also roll with 19 zoom? Simple. you need to RNG your way into getting a time-worn spire with the correct scope, and then you're immediately locked into running a counterbalance mod to deal with the horrendous horizontal recoil that time-worn has. With peace of mind, the sight is fixed, and you're given a choice of barrel perks which greatly flatten the learning curve to get good with the weapon. It's a no-brainer. So, let's talk about the rolls you should be chasing here. One of the best aspects of this weapon is that it is fully craftable. As of the writing of this video, I have no clue what the drop rate is for the Resonance version of this weapon, or red rolls as we're calling them, but in over 5 hours of farming the PsiOps playlist, I only ever encountered 4 normal drops of this weapon, one of which was the roll that I was talking about, and no red drops of the weapon at all. The runic chest loot pool does contain every PsiOps weapon and armor piece, so I'm surprised that I got 4 out of the drops I did get. In a few weeks, we're going to be able to unlock some very handy perks at the war table to ease that grind, including the ability to purchase the weapon directly for a random roll. There's a perk on week 4 here that allows you to get a red weapon on your first Umbral Engram decryption, which will be very handy for obtaining any missing patterns. For the peace of mind, you'll need 5 of these patterns. 5! I don't imagine the process of obtaining 5 patterns is going to be terribly fun for anyone involved, but when you get them, we have some decisions to be made at the crafting table, for both PvP and PvE. Perk number 1 is a simple choice, Arrowhead Break. It'll be the single biggest thing you can do to control the recoil of the weapon substantially, whilst giving a nice boost to handling as well. Perk number 2 is a toss-up depending on your needs. Appended Mag for PvE would be great, with no stat penalty to the larger magazine size. Extended Mag tanks reload speed significantly and only gives 1 extra burst in the magazine for your trouble. For PvP, you're looking at high caliber rounds being your best pick, with light mag and ricochet rounds able to suit most people's needs, whilst giving nice stat boosts in the process. Perks 3 and 4? Well, I'm going to encourage you to experiment for yourselves because quite frankly, they're all good in one way or another. In column 3, I think we can safely discard auto-loading holster because that's a bit of a weird choice given the gun and the perk selection here. Compulsive reloader as well just isn't my cup of tea, but if you are a compulsive reloader then hey presto, your needs are met. In column 4, every single perk here has a use. Every single one. It's really up to you what you want to do. Focused Fury could be an incredible sleeper pick for destroying lobbies if you can land your crits. Adrenaline Junkie is a very compelling pick with the Void 3.0 changes, with a whole litany of grenade types now at your disposal. Harmony, Moving Target, and Vorpal are all known quantities at this point, and Elemental Capacitor is a sleeper pick when you consider that when used with the Stasis subclass, you get plus 20 to recoil direction. It's mad. I'll recommend Overflow and Vorpal as a fantastic hybrid role that excels at both sides of the game. But for Trials and Competitive, I'll be crafting Arrowhead Break, high caliber rounds, Perpetual Motion, and Moving Target for pure consistency, unbound by conditions I can't guarantee to execute at any given time. For me, I'm someone that wants that performance on demand, when and where I want it. But I'm not you. So the question is, what do you want? Go ahead, tell me what kind of roles you'd be looking for and for which activity. I'm always on the lookout for good recommendations for specific scenarios, so go ahead and rack that brain of yours. Who knows, we might just make a video out of it. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ascendant Nomad, and I'm your Crucible Doctor. See you in the comments below. Cheers.